If someone had told me that the deepest heartbreak would come from the people I loved most, I would have smiled and said, "Not my family." I truly believed that love protected a home. My name is Elena. I am 71 years old, a grandmother to 4 beautiful children, and for most of my life, I believed kindness always found its way back to the person who gave it. I spent 42 years in the same little house. Every wall carried a memory. The wooden table in the kitchen still had tiny scratches where my grandchildren had learned to write their names. The old apple tree in the backyard had grown beside my children, season after season. Every corner of that house held laughter, birthdays, Christmas dinners, and quiet evenings when I stayed awake sewing clothes or preparing lunches for school. After my husband passed away, the silence became heavier, but I never complained. I would sit beside the window every morning with a cup of tea, watching the neighborhood wake up. Children rode bicycles down the street. Birds landed on the fence. Life continued, even when grief stayed. My children often reminded me that I wasn't alone. Mom, my oldest daughter Sophia, would say, "We'll always take care of you." Those words warmed my heart. I believed every single one. Whenever someone needed help, I was there. If my son Daniel lost his job, I helped him with groceries. If Sophia needed someone to watch the children, my door was already open. When my youngest daughter Clara divorced, she stayed with me for 6 months. I gave her my bedroom while I slept on the old sofa, without telling anyone my back hurt every morning. I never kept score. Love wasn't something I counted. It was something I gave. My grandchildren loved visiting. They filled the house with laughter that made the rooms feel alive again. Little Emma always baked cookies with me. Lucas loved listening to stories about how his grandfather had built the garden fence with his own hands. Those moments convinced me that everything would be all right. But slowly, something changed. Not all at once. Not enough for anyone else to notice. Just enough for my heart to become uneasy. Phone conversations ended the moment I entered the room. Family dinners became shorter. Whenever I asked simple questions, the answers felt rehearsed. "We're just busy, Mom. Nothing's wrong. You worrying too much." Maybe they were right. Old people worrying. That's what everyone says. So I tried to ignore the feeling. I blamed my loneliness. I blamed my imagination. Weeks passed, then months. One afternoon, I baked Sophia's favorite cinnamon bread. She had promised to visit with the children. I spent hours preparing everything. Fresh flowers on the table, clean blankets, hot soup waiting on the stove. By sunset, no one came, no phone call, no message. I sat alone at the table, listening to the clock tick louder than ever before. The bread grew cold. So did my smile. The next morning, Sophia called. "Oh, Mom." Something came up. Her voice sounded distant, almost distracted. "It's okay," I replied gently, and I meant it. At least I wanted to. Still, something inside me whispered that people don't simply forget someone who has spent a lifetime remembering everyone else. I pushed that thought away because mothers and grandmothers always make excuses for the people they love. As autumn arrived, another small change appeared. Daniel insisted on helping with my paperwork. "I'll organize everything for you," he said. "You shouldn't have to worry about bills anymore." It sounded thoughtful, loving, even. So I thanked him. I handed him folders I had always managed myself. He smiled. "You've done enough for us." Hearing those words brought tears to my eyes. For a moment, I believed they finally saw everything I had quietly sacrificed over the years. I had no idea that sometimes the sweetest words hide the quietest secrets. I wasn't being excluded with shouting. I wasn't being pushed away with anger. It was happening with smiles, with polite conversations, with careful silence, and somehow that hurt even more. Because betrayal rarely arrives looking like betrayal. Sometimes it arrives dressed as kindness. Winter arrived gently, covering the neighborhood in quiet mornings and long, peaceful evenings. From my kitchen window, everything looked the same. The mailman still waved. The children across the street still laughed on their way to school. The old apple tree still stood proudly in my backyard, but inside my home, something had changed. Not in the furniture, not in the walls, in the people. The phone rang less often. Family visits became shorter. Whenever everyone gathered together, conversation somehow stopped when I entered the room. At first, I smiled and pretended not to notice. No one likes to believe they are becoming an outsider in their own family. One Sunday, Sophia invited everyone to dinner at her house. The table was beautiful. My grandchildren hugged me tightly, and for a little while, I forgot the strange feeling that had been growing inside me. Then Daniel's phone rang. He stepped into the hallway. A few seconds later, Clara quietly followed him. When they returned, both smiled too quickly. "We were just talking about work," Daniel explained before I had even asked. I nodded. I didn't ask. For a brief second, The room became completely silent. Then someone changed the subject. It was such a small moment. Anyone else might have forgotten it. I didn't. As the weeks passed, little things kept adding up. One afternoon, I visited Daniel without telling him first. His car was in the driveway. I knocked. No answer. Just as I turned to leave, I heard voices inside. Not loud, only whispers. Then someone said, "Don't let Mom know yet." I froze. I wasn't angry. I was confused. Maybe they were planning a surprise. Maybe it was my birthday. I wanted to believe that. So I walked away before anyone saw me. That night I couldn't sleep. My husband's photograph sat on the bedside table. I looked at his smiling face. "You always knew when something wasn't right," I whispered. "I wish you were here." The room answered only with silence. A few days later, I needed one of my insurance papers. I opened the drawer where I had always kept every important document. The folders were there, but they weren't organized the way I remembered. Someone had clearly gone through them. I tried to convince myself that Daniel had simply arranged everything differently. Still, an uncomfortable feeling settled in my chest. Not fear, not yet. Just uncertainty. The following week, my neighbor Margaret stopped by with homemade soup. "You've been alone a lot lately," she said gently. "I've noticed your children come by when you're out walking." I looked at her. "They do." She nodded without thinking much about it. "Yes, I assumed you asked them to check on the house." I smiled politely. I must have, but inside, I knew I hadn't. That evening, I made myself a cup of tea and sat in my favorite chair. For the first time in my life, I stopped making excuses. Instead, I started paying attention. I watched. I listened. I stopped filling uncomfortable silences with cheerful conversations. And something unexpected happened. People reveal much more when they believe you are no longer watching. Daniel stopped by one afternoon. He asked casually, "Mom, do you still have the original papers for the house?" I looked into his eyes. "I think so. If you can't find them, don't worry. I'll help." His smile was warm, too warm. For the first time, I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I simply said, "I'll look when I have time." A tiny shadow crossed his face before he smiled again. Of course, it lasted only a second, but I saw it. That evening, I opened every folder carefully. Most papers were exactly where they belonged. One envelope wasn't. Inside was a copy of a property valuation I didn't remember requesting. No explanation, no note, just numbers. I held the paper in my hands for a long time. The house, the only place that still felt like my husband, was sitting beside me. Why had someone ordered this? Who asked for it? And why had no one mentioned it to me? For the first time, the question wasn't, am I imagining this? The question became, what don't I know? I folded the paper neatly and placed it back exactly as I had found it. I told no one, not because I was afraid, because I wanted the truth to reveal itself naturally. Some truths cannot be forced. They appear quietly to those who are patient enough to see them. That night, I looked around my little home. The photographs on the wall, the worn wooden floors, the faded curtains I had sewn decades ago. Everything felt exactly the same. Yet deep inside, I knew my life had already begun to change. I simply hadn't discovered how much. And for the first time, I realized that silence doesn't always hide peace. Sometimes, silence is where the truth patiently waits. Quanto más envejeça, más comprende que la verdad casi nunca liga haciendo ruido. Liga en silencio, escondida entre papeles olvidados, en conversations que terminan cuando entras a una habitación, en miradas que ya no pueden sostener las tuyas. Después de encontrar aquella tasación de la casa, decidí no decir nada, no porque tuviera miedo, sino porque necesitaba entender antes de hablar. Por primera vez en mi vida, dejé apreciarme a proteger los sentimientos de todos los demás. Esta vez decidí proteger mi propia paz. Una semana después, Daniel me llamó. Mamá, ¿estás libre mañana? Sofía y Clara también quieren verte. Su voz sonaba demasiado alegre. Claro que sí, respondí. Al día siguiente llegaron con flores, pasteles y sonrisas cuidadosamente preparadas. Nos sentamos alrededor de la misma mesa, donde nuestra familia había compartido miles de comidas durante décadas. Al principio hablamos de cosas sencillas, los nietos, el clima, los vecinos. Todo parece normal, hasta que Daniel respiró profundamente. Mamá, hemos estado pensando en tu futuro. Sonreí con tranquilidad. Mi futuro. Sofía tomó mi mano con delicadeza. Solo queremos lo mejor para ti. Aquellas palabras debieron hacerme sentir segura. Pero, por alguna razón, mi corazón permaneció en silencio. Daniel colocó una carpeta sobre la mesa. Encontramos una residencia para adultos mayores. Es un lugar hermoso, tranquilo y seguro. Ella nunca estará sola. ma la carpeta, pero